Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. And I'm seeing you once again, and you're seeing me once again with lecture 17 of Business English. Well, today's lecture is going to be about report writing. Though it is going to be about report writing, but it will focus on research and the process of research. Why? Now, in the previous lecture, lecture 16, we discussed all about report writing. We talked about the basics and anatomy and all the elements that are part of a report writing. However, what are these reports based on? It's research. And how do we go through research process, and what are the things that help us collect all data that is later on reported? So report writing is the product of the research process. Now, I once again talk about these three things in one loop. It's research that we do, and in order to do the research, first what we write is a proposal. That's a plan that we offer. Then we go through the research process, and in the end what we produce is the final product. It's report based on that research process to let other people know what we have gone through or what we have done and what is the final product. So basically, when we talk about report writing, we should be knowing about proposal writing, we should be knowing about research and research process. Okay. However, I introduced report writing in the beginning, and now I will take you to the research, understanding of research and research process, and then I will bring you back to proposal writing, and we're collecting all three together. We will understand report writing as an organic whole of all these three elements together. So now today's lecture is again a part of the series based on report writing. However, its focus is today research and research methodology and all the things that are related. So let's move on and see whatever we are going to discuss in today's talk. We will discuss what is research and what do we mean by that. How do we conduct an academic investigation, or how do we conduct a professional investigation or business related investigation? What is the process? How do we put up proposal, and how do we write report? So basically, it's proposal, report, and process. And process starts right from the beginning when we think about the idea and when we are planning our proposal. So proposal starts from the beginning. It involves the proposal writing, it involves the research process, and it involves the report writing too. So it covers all the things. So the very first step is process, then proposal, and then report writing. Okay. So let's move on and see what we are going to discuss. Well, first of all, let us critically understand what do we mean by research. Well, research is the systematic investigation investigation into and study of material, sources, etc., in order to establish facts and research and reach new conclusions or reach solutions. Now, systematic investigation means that it's a systematic, process of searching, of finding out facts and information. If you look at the phenomena, what is research? The word research comes from search, and if we say research, it's searching again. Searching is basically one action that we do all the time in our everyday life. We are searching for information, we are searching for things, we are searching for phenomenon, we are searching for people, we are searching all the time. And research means searching it again for some particular purpose. So this is something that we all do all the time, in almost all of the aspects in our life, in all fields of our life. However, the academic and professional research, it is a bit different from everyday routine research. Why? Because it is very systematic in nature. It is based on theories. For that research we plan, and then we make up a concrete plan, and then we execute it, and then most of the time we have to report it as well. However, in everyday life, what we do, research is part of everyday life. We are researching, and it's an unconscious process that is taking place. Not all the time we make a conscious plan of it, and not all the time we report data to somebody or even to ourselves. So what we do it is a unsystematic thing that is not officially planned or reported. So the difference between, though research is something that we are doing all the time, however, academic and professional research is something that is very systematic in nature, and each and every step is calculated and systematic. It's an endeavor to discover new or allocate old facts, etc., by the scientific study of a subject or by a course of critical investigation. Well, Oxford Dictionary explains it as an endeavor, as an effort where you discover or you collect facts and data through a scientific method of collection of data, and you analyze it, and that's again based on some theories and approaches, and this process makes it a critical investigation where you are not only collecting information, but you are analyzing information, putting your own perceptual screens, and then including all the perceptual screens by the help of those theories and approaches. So research, academic and professional research, is entirely different from our everyday research efforts. So its systematic nature plus its critical nature, when these both of these things are combined together, this results in academic and professional research. Well, research is what we do when we have a question or a problem we want to resolve. Well, what do we research for? Like, for example, in our everyday life, there are certain things we need to research about. Okay, if I need to buy some clothes, my summer clothes, and I ask my friends, where are these, where can I find this particular material in summer clothes? Oh, okay, and I need this particular color, and she would say, market A, market B, market D, market C, all four are good for that. I would say, okay, but I need this particular material and this particular cost. It has to be cost effective. Okay, then she would say, why don't you go and visit the market and see which markets are offering what kind of fabric plus what kind of price, and I will go and I will have a survey. I go to 4 markets and I look at all the shops and find that 2 markets are comparatively cheaper. Okay, now I go into the markets and I'm concerned whether the fabric is of the same quality or it's with the price it's getting low in the quality. So I go to shopkeepers and I ask them and I look at the material and collect samples whether it's of the same quality or not. What I'm doing, I am going through a research. And what was my problem? Right in the beginning, I thought that I need to have summer clothes, but this particular material and this price bracket. So this was my problem, and in order to solve my problem, I got into a process, and I started thinking, where should I go first and ask? And then my unconscious decision was that I should ask my friends, and I started from there, and then they directed me to some market area. Then I went to market, collected, searched them, surveyed them, went into the markets, had my physical interaction, asked shopkeepers, asked people, collected samples myself, and then moved on, and finally I made my decision, and I was able to buy them, or I thought that I should go for another type of search to some other area of the city. So for research, you always have some kind of issue in your mind. For that, you are looking for some answers, some solutions. Not all the time you get the answer, or not all the time you get the accurate answer, or maybe what you get sometimes is a clue to an answer, and then you again need to do a research, or someone else would do it, starting from the point where you leave it, picking it up from there, and then moving on. And so research goes on and on and on and on, and eventually, what it comes forward, it brings facts, it brings knowledge, and it keeps adding into our information. We may already think we know the answer to our questions already. Sometimes we understand that we know them, but to authenticate that this is true, we need to search. For example, if it's a group of friends, and they had a very bad fight. Two of them had a very bad fight, and we were six friends together, and two of us, they had a fight in between them. The other day, when we go back to our university, the teacher asked us that we have been reported that two of you were indulged in some kind of harsh argument, and that was a kind of thing that is not good for university's reputation. So we want to know what happened. Now we would like to inform the teacher what has happened, but teacher would like to she would know that, okay, out of two, one is of a kind of notorious reputation, and the boy is known for this kind of behavior, unfriendly behavior. However, still, although the teacher has an idea that this is the boy A would have caused to initiate, he would have initiated the conflict, the dispute, and then we are being witnesses. We are telling the teacher, yes, you're right, but still, because the boy, and his parents and maybe all the stakeholders are not ready to accept this assumption, despite the fact, because we know the background, so this is not assumption for us, but this may be an assumption for them. So to authenticate that yes, this is true, we go back to the point where they had their dispute. We ask people, we collect samples, and we ask people who belong to impartial parties, who do not have any stake, like they are not involved with us, they are not involved with the pair which had a dispute among them. So what we are doing, we are trying to, although we know the answer right from the beginning, but we are trying to authenticate it and eliminate all doubts attached with the results. So it's not that we are always finding something entirely new. Sometimes we try to do it to authenticate our knowledge, or to eliminate the buts and whys with that. But until we have subjected our problems to rigorous scientific scrutiny, our knowledge remains little more than guesswork, or at best intuition. So, however, since my intention is to add authenticity to my research solution, so I need to go through a rigorous scientific scrutiny. My methods, my ways of collecting my data, my ways of analyzing my data needs to be scientifically scrutinized. If I am going to the place, I should pick up people who belong to neutral parties. I should collect data, and somebody who is going to analyze the samples or analyze the proofs again should belong to some neutral party. So everything has to be in a controlled situation, so no intruder, no one who belongs to some party comes in and try to manipulate the results. So when I'm controlling all these fronts related to this problem, I am making a rigorous effort to have to scrutinize the whole process to get the truth out of it. All right. Well, a general perspective of research is that first priority is to formulate your question. Well, that is very important. What do I want to know? I should be very clear in the beginning, because I said that this is one major thing that makes it different from everyday's research activity, that what we are doing every day, we do not really plan, or maybe we plan, but we are not conscious of our plans most of the time. Sometimes we just step out of the car, and I get into the market, because in the back of my head I know that I have to buy this thing, and then I calculate, okay, in this city where can I go to buy this thing, and I know there are 3 markets, and out of 3 markets I know that this market is on my way, so this is the most suitable place that I can go and buy this thing. And then I say, no, this one has cheaper price, so I will go to a 50 kilometers away from my off route, and will go to that cheaper market and buy the product. So this is happening in my head, although the process is there, but maybe my decision is, or my research is unconscious, and even I'm not aware of it, that I'm going through this process to have my answer done. So in conscious situation, and in other words, and in academic and professional situations, we need to be crystal clear about our plans. What we want to achieve, why do we want to achieve this, who are the people who will be involved if I go and answer my questions, what are the questions that I want to answer, want to be answered by the end of this whole process, because research is something very expensive. You're not only it costs you money, it costs you time, it costs you energy, it costs you so many things. So in the end, if you are not clear what you've got out of this process of all this consumption of money, energy, manpower, and your time, then this is going to cost you, and if you belong to some company, it costs your company as well. So then figure out how you are going to answer it. Once your questions are clear, they give you directions about how you are going to answer them. Because in your questions always there are some active words, some action words, some verbs, some nouns that which give you direction, which tell you that this is the point you have to focus. Now, when I want to answer my question, the very first thing that comes to my mind is that, okay, this cannot be entirely new problem. No problem is an entirely new problem. Because we all are human beings, and since the time the life has started on this earth, human beings are almost always have been into the same kind of situations, although the intensity, the nature, and circumstances related to these problems, they may vary based on the time we are in or the advancement of the world and the technology and the people related, and all these factors that add into the variations. However, problems tend to be almost the same. So somebody would definitely have gone through the same kind of situation somewhere in the world, or maybe in my own country, or maybe in my own city, or maybe in my own circle of people. So how have others answered this question, or maybe something like this question? I would like to collect data from them, and I would see how did they go about the answering question, and how did they collect their data, and how did they analyze the data, and what were their results. So this is, before that I start my field work, I get into the field and I start collecting physical data. I am trying to be benefited from people's experience. You remember in the previous lecture, we talked about two kinds of data. We talked about primary data and we talked about secondary data. So when we are getting benefit of secondary data, what we are doing, we are trying to enrich the point where we have to start from. For example, if this is the point from where I have to start the collection of my primary data, however, my secondary data will give me, enough material that I would like to, okay, I can move a few steps ahead and I can start my search from here instead of here. So this gap can be covered from getting experience, getting, people's observation experience and going through them and, moving forward in my own research, because this has already been explored by him. So if I am collecting all these facts and pieces of knowledge, I am enriching my understanding and knowledge, and I don't need to repeat all those things. So I will start to move, would like to start from the point that has not been touched so far, or it has not been touched that rigorously so far. So I hope you get my point. This secondary data informs you about people's experience, and then you are well equipped to find out or locate the point where you want to start your primary research from. Now, how does your proposal fit in with what others have done? So then you have to all the time look into, because you cannot look at each and everything that people might have done. You would like to, like I gave you the example in the beginning, like my friend told me about the 4 markets. But 4 markets may not be of my use, because I know market A, market B has the kind of material. Market C, half of the shops in market C have the material, or half of the shops are not. And then market D is altogether, it's not of my interest, because there I find that fabric is of not that quality that I want. So what I'm doing, I am collecting the data, but all the time I'm in a direct scrutiny between the data I collect and the information I need. So this close correspondence helps me filter the information that I need. So I always try to pick up the information and go deep inside that best answers my questions. So this close interaction with your proposal helps you be on the track and carry as much as you need, because carrying a baggage of everything that you keep collecting may make you very tired, very exhausted in the halfway. However, if you pick up things and you are keep filtering and throwing away the things that you do not need, and you are keeping an affordable weightage of your baggage, then you can walk as far as your weight that you are carrying, or you can allows you, or you are able to solve your issue. How will you know when you have answered it? How will you know when you've answered it? This close correspondence between your questions and the data you collect will let you aware of this phenomenon, whether the question has been answered or you still need more data to answer your question. So if you keep them aside and you keep on collecting data, keep on collecting, well, how would you know that I've collected enough data? So this close correspondence between your plans and your actions keeps you updated about how much has been done and how much is there to be done. And then in the end, what you do is that you present your answers. So this first priority of formulating your questions right from the beginning, from here we start the process. And when we are doing all these things, we are in the process of doing our research. And when we present our answers, this is the point where we write our dissertations, or we write our thesis, or we write our reports. And we know that there are three types of reports: report memos, and report manuscripts, which is what we are discussing now, the larger, the longer document of report. So this is if I say report writing, or if I say proposal writing, or if I say research, these three are steps of the same process of producing knowledge. All right, when we know that research is different from guesswork, our research has to be authentic, reliable, and testable, and generalize. We should be able to generalize it, and that basically is equal to scientific investigation. For example, when I make a proposal and when I go through a research process and then I report it, if somebody challenges my work, somebody challenges my research should be able to answer those challenges. It has to be authentic, it has to be reliable, and it has to be testable. If somebody would want to test my answers and results, it has to be testable, it has to be generalizable. Although the research in social sciences, it is very difficult and very sensitive issue to make it to help this domain to come up to all these and answer all these areas. However, research has many systematic way of conducting these inquiries that eventually enable it to be authentic, reliable, and generalizable. So what is scientific scrutiny, or what is scientific inquiry, and what are the characteristics of formal research? If you look at the screen, you can see this upside down pyramid shape that I talked in the last lecture. It's a kind of triangle, and the peak of the triangle is facing downwards. So you start from the general, and slowly and gradually you're moving to the specific. However, you can look at the layers, and you can look at the parts that you cover, and stages you cover one by one. It starts with a question or problem, as I mentioned, and then you move on to that stage which requires a clear articulation of a goal. Then it follows a specific plan or procedure, and it moves on to connect you with. It often divides the principal problems into more manageable problems or category of sub-problems, and then you specify assumptions you are making, and collection and interpretation of data finally enables you to produce your results with authentic, reliable, and generalizable findings. Why is research a valued source of knowledge? Well, common ways of knowing about something is personal experience, intuition, experts, traditions, authority, and scientific method. So we just discussed all these things in detail, that why we prefer the systematic way of inquiry in academic and professional research, because all of the benefits attached with it. What is science, the scientific method, and research? Well, these are few basic definitions or pieces of information that you should know. That science is a body of established knowledge, and the observation, identification, investigation, and theoretical explanation of natural phenomena is what we can get out of science. And usually the ultimate goal is theory generation and research and verification. So if you are able to generate a theory based on facts, and you're able to verify that already produced theories, your research is authentic and reliable. So what is this theory? A theory is a set of interrelated constructs and propositions that specify relations among variables to explain and predict phenomena. It should be simple, consistent with observed relationships, and tentative and verifiable. So this is what you call a theory. Now, what is a scientific method? Once again, it involves the principles and processes regarded as characteristics of or necessary for scientific investigation. And I just before 3-4 slides I told you what scientific investigation is. It's a process or approach to generate valid and trustworthy knowledge. So if you are controlling and if you are scrutinizing your process, basically you are conducting a scientific inquiry. And research, once again, after all this discussion, is the application of the scientific method, and it's the systematic process of collecting and logically analyzing information. And research methods are methodology. These are different methods which help you to collect data and analyze data to get your findings. So the ways one collects and analyzes data, and methods developed for acquiring trustworthy knowledge via reliable and valid procedures are part of research methodology. All right, now this part of the discussion will include the research process, how to conduct an academic investigation. Well, it is impossible to separate the conduct of a research investigation from the exercise of writing up the report. It goes side by side. Sometimes people like to, keep writing their investigations and collecting data, and they postpone and they create different drafts of writing. So when they are doing their first draft, second drafts, so they keep on collecting and performing their analysis on the data, and this enables them to have the final draft towards the end. So this is a kind of inseparable process. This part of talk focuses on the strategies specifically and skills that go into conducting an academic or professional research investigation. All kinds of methodological questions are involved in decisions about the organization of your report. If you have not planned your research project, this will become evident in your report. So your report basically reflects the process that you have gone through. If you feel during writing your report you feel confused, or you feel moving back and forward all the time, that means that your research process was not planned. So that is why you reflect that back and forth movement even in your document. And the criticisms will only come when people read your report. So then there is no way going back. So before writing your report, or even at the point of designing your proposal, you should be very careful, well informed about how to go about the process, so you can consider all the things which are to be considered. So once again, research is a process, proposal, and report. It's a cycle of these three aspects, and since we are talking about reports, the final and the eventual product, we have to include a process, research process, and the proposal writing to understand the final product. So what are the key areas of research design and planning? Well, that demands some detailed talk. Key areas of research designing and planning is a kind of kind of a cycle of different steps which are scientific, very scientific in nature, because they have organization and they are very planned. So let's move on and see what are they. You can look at a cycle on the screen, and the cycle has various steps inside. The very first step is purpose of the investigation and differences between reports and proposals. Then the second step is posing questions and defining problems, and the third step will be primary and secondary research, then methods and results, what they have in common, then conducting a questionnaire, a survey, and then collaborating, investigation and writing, and then finally producing your report. All right. So purpose of the investigation, differences between reports and essays. Some people will say that report writing is just like essay writing. No, it's not that. We can talk about generally agreed conventions regarding structure and argumentative style in essay and report writing. But the purpose is different in that you have now moved to the stage of conducting your own empirical piece of research. Essays are normally based on research. However, this research is more of secondary nature. But in research articles, your research becomes, goes beyond secondary data, and you collect your own empirical research, the primary data, and your report is based on that. You have moved from second-hand academic study to first-hand discovery and testing of the theories and methods of academic investigation. So it's a clear-cut difference between essay writing and report writing. The main difference is the move from secondary to primary research. And some more differences between the secondary and primary research are the literature review is now focused on finding a justification of your own original piece of empirical research. With research-based investigations, you usually have much more freedom to determine the objectives and the specific research questions of your study. The report involves an interesting interplay between your primary and secondary research as you return to discussing the connections between your own findings and those of other researchers. Then empirical investigations usually have a more social dimension. You will be building on what other researchers have done, discovered and theorized. Your report will conclude with recommendations for future researchers. So you are in a loop this time. This might include the possible significance of your findings for other researchers and the limitations of your studies too. So academic research and its social nature starts with your literature review, where you establish the relationship of your study to work that has already been done, like other people have done it, and in that specific area. You need to clarify whether your research is intended to replicate previous research. It's going to be a total replication, but in a different context or with a different population, or you're going to extend on the information, that research, and exploring significant new variables, or you are going to challenge the previous work with a view to challenging its knowledge claims. You need to be prepared to criticize work and you consider to be problematic in some way. So you need to decide based on your literature review what you want to do next. You want to replicate, you want to extend on the knowledge, or you want to challenge the already previously established facts and you want to come up with your new facts. So one more important thing is that it is important not only that you differentiate between these three distinct functions, but that you distinguish between your studies, intellectual purpose or social purpose, whether you are going to only be inform people, or you are going to inform or persuade, or you are going to persuade only. So you need to know what is the intention behind your research. Intellectual purposes basically are defined in terms of your problems, and you just inform the possible solutions about that, and it's informative in nature. However, the social purpose is within the academic and professional community, which includes building on and crediting others' work. So it depends what kind of research you are conducting and what is the intention of your report. So we are still moving and trying to understand the process of research. So what we have discussed so far is the purpose of investigation and difference between an essay writing and report writing. Now moving on to our second important aspect of the cycle is posing questions and defining problems. So posing questions and defining problems basically include 4 major steps in that: analyzing the problem, then writing and formulating report headings, articulating issues of value and perspectives, and issues of values and perspectives. Now, what is defining and analyzing problem? The process of an analysis requires a skill of abstraction. For example, on the topic of language and education in Pakistan, some first-year social science researcher students were asked to suggest reason why the topic might have been chosen. They were encouraged to identify a number of reasons. Once the class had suggested and discussed a range of possible reasons, the teacher asked the students to put these all together as topics rather than propositions. This was intended to serve also as practice in formulating headings for a report outline. This process involves summarizing the propositions into noun phrases. Read nominalization. You should know what is nominalization, and we will discuss it when we are going to discuss a writing style for more about this, for more understanding on this. Like, for example, when the class was asked, their teacher produced on the whiteboard, these were the, what is the medium of instruction in Pakistan. Their noun phrases were like comparative and oppositional problems, English versus Urdu, and their topical, controversial issues, argumentations, urgent, problematic, complex, investigatable, ready student population with opinions on the topic, and so they have given a list of topics for the teachers to write on the board. Now, how do you formulate noun phrases? It was important in this exercise to distinguish between that, what the topic is and what it does. To convert the letter, what it does, into heading, it is better to use the more dynamic, action-oriented expression of qualities, and converting the verbs into noun phrase. For example, promoting reflection on the role, value, status of English. Drawing, you see, it draws on students' experience of issues, draws on language teachers' own content experience. So you convert this into drawing on student experience of issues or problems, or drawing on language teachers' own content expertise. So you're transforming the noun phrases into, you know, the ideas into noun phrases. So now, articulating a proposition or research question. This is the question you should ask yourself before you begin to write, and the answer should, what is the point of my research study? When you have all the ideas together and convert it into noun phrases, then you can talk about and you can categorize them. They can be 12, they can be 16. You try to categorize them into you know, minimum categories of information. So eventually you will see 3 or 4 major questions coming out of them, and they may direct you to let you understand what is the point of focus for your research study. Well, it helps to shape your research questions or propositions to give focus to your introduction. And you may choose to broaden or narrow the scope of your questions in the light of what you found or the problem you experienced. And you are not bound to stick to your preliminary thesis once you begin the research. You can always modify your questions, or you can always modify your research proposal. Your research may lead you to new, different issues and questions, and it may motivate the researcher and shows him or her new avenues to get into and find the data. Well, there are some more pointers to let you set your focus. You know, can I tell the reader? These are the questions to ask yourself. Can I tell the reader anything new or different? Do I have a solution to the problem? Or do I have a new angle, a new approach to the issue? Should I take the minority view of this matter? What exactly is my own theory about this? So when you ask these questions and apply the answers onto your proposals or onto your plan of your study, you are basically scrutinizing your own plan and getting deep into your plan and seeing what possibilities are there to enrich the process of your research, and eventually, definitely, your report will be a reflection of your enriched process. Understanding underlying conceptual viewpoints. So critical and argumentative database are often much less direct about their purpose and motivation than expository texts. They are therefore harder to analyze for their underlying conceptual structures. Now, this part of talk is going to talk a little about conducting your literature review, because in secondary, while you are collecting your secondary data, you are dealing with text most of the time, reading books, reading newspapers, reading articles, and you're trying to get data out of it. So how do you go about it? You will find letters to the editor in a newspaper often presenting confused or long-winded arguments. So you need to know how do you take what you need out of a text, whether it's a newsletter, it's a newspaper, or it's an article, or it's a book, or it's any kind of text. You need to have that skill of skimming through the information and focusing on the information that you need to, take out of it to support your secondary collection of data, that is your literature review. However, an academic essay is expected to feature a much clearer argumentative structure. So understanding this argumentative structure is not only to understand what you are reading, but it will also help you when you are producing your own argumentation, your own argumentative structures in the text when you are writing your reports. So whenever you are reading something, what you need to look for, or whenever you are writing or producing an argumentative talk, what you need to look for is that state the issue to be discussed, state the writer's position or conclusion, and provide reasons for that conclusion as well. Readers are also looking for acknowledgement of other propositions, so it is usual to take account of alternative arguments. There cannot be one argument, there can be multiple arguments, but you should know which one is the leading argument and how the writer is presenting comparison and contrast to make that argument, to highlight that argument. This is why the best critical write-ups have qualities of a literature review, as they tend to show evidence of wide and discriminating reading. It is difficult to put forward a counter argument without attributing it to someone or some school of thought. So this school of thought can be your framework of your theories and approaches that you are embedding in your text. Student of research and students and the professionals of report writing, and when they go through their research, they understand and they're expected to present their arguments like this. They present a thesis, then they present an antithesis, and then they synthesize the situation to go back to and prove their thesis. Now this means an argument and counter argument, and weighing up the two arguments to reach or support one argument that you want your writers to believe in or act upon. Whether you are informing or you are convincing, it depends. The decision depends on that. So this makes the point of taking account of alternative or opposing arguments before a final summary or a concluding synthesis. So while discussing posing questions and defining problems, we need to understand that it further goes into analyzing problem, formulating outline, and issues of value and perspective, these three areas that we are working on, and then it further has connecting steps of developing and making propositions, summarizing them, refining them, scrutinizing them, structuring them, bringing forward what you need to focus on, and then articulating it clearly in your write-up or your report. So the next thing that comes up on the discussion is the primary and secondary research. How do we do our primary research and how do we do our secondary research? So let's move on and talk about our primary and secondary research methods. And under this discussion, what we are going to talk about, we will see how to review our research options, what are secondary research options, and what are primary research options that we can opt for. So when we review our research options, the basic premise is that academic investigations should be approached in a systematic way. Right from the beginning, I have been repeating this term again and again. So you are aware of the spirit of the systematic way of conducting an academic or professional investigation. Before deciding on your research options, you need to work out a profile of the study to see what types of research approaches or methods will be most appropriate for your work. So each step is calculated and scrutinized to that will eventually help you authenticate and call your research reliable or testable. So a recommended sequence of steps to follow in the research process, if you perceive a broad problem, any broad problem, like if we say that if it's business management, and we are saying that why do women who have children are paying more attention to the quality and quantity of their work than the girls who are unmarried. Okay, if this is the research problem that you want to investigate about, you need to read literature on relevant theoretical and empirical work, looking for a way of narrowing the problem. Discuss with peers and people who are concerned to define a research problem, a researchable problem to you. Define the context of the problem if you want to research about these women in some particular background, or you have a context to be researched them in. Review any comparable case studies that have already discussed such issues of quality and quantity of work related to women or people who have liabilities, especially for research questions and methodology, what questions they have posed or what methodology they have used. Because when we talk about marriage, or when we talk about children, one of them is social liability and other is biological liability. So any research or case study that would talk about social liabilities or biological liabilities may be of use in that matter. So frame your research questions, design an investigation procedure, select and retrieve appropriate data, proceed with analysis and interpretations, and compare your findings and interpretations with other relevant studies reviewed earlier. Draw tentative conclusions, revisit your research questions or hypothesis. Hypothesis is basically an assumption that you create right in the beginning. You might have done this when you were doing your matriculation. You would hypothetically assume one mathematical problem, and then you go through a mathematical way of solving that problem, and in the end you would either prove it positive or negative, and that is a mathematical solution. So in the same way, you assume one thing in the beginning, and through the process of research you are trying to prove your assumptions either false or true. So this statement that you write as an assumption in the beginning is called hypothesis. Research in the social science is expected to combine the originality of an individual study with the connection of that work to existing disciplinary knowledge and previous research. So it also and any study which the researcher intends to share with a wider community, whether academic or business, needs to be contextualized to show where it comes from in terms of its theoretical and social influences, or the time, place and circumstances to which it applies. So this functional analysis of the stages in the research report shows the progression from secondary research to primary research and back to a comparison with other scholarly findings or academic or professional findings. Now, look at the screen. It gives you a functional analysis of a research report and the empirical core of a method and results. Look at how it gives you three parts of this time hourglass: general, scientific, and again general. Starting from the abstract and introduction, how you narrow down your thesis, and again you move on to your mature results, implications, broader implications, recommendations, and finally you reach your conclusions. So this is very important to understand this process as a kind of move from general to narrow, and then narrow to again moving on to general to provide a comparison to restate your conclusion of findings. Now, this pattern of general discussion that you can see, how research report requires a discussion of results and which relates your own study to comparable empirical work by other scholars and preferably already introduced in your literature review. So this is what you do when you are framing your literature review. Now, let's talk about some secondary research options that we have. There are a range of resources available for secondary research. The most well-known are published statistics and census, housing and social security data, and so on, published textbooks, theoretical work, secondary analysis by experts and reports that are available in your maybe in your office, in your city, in your country, media, documentaries, for example, as a source of information, personal documents, diaries, people's notes, and so on and so forth. So everything that has already been produced can be served and you can collect as your secondary data option. Now, primary data research options are basically the data that you collect yourself. So for that, we need to understand what are different methods of data collection. So any field research that provides you some kind of data and that helps you have collection of primary data is primary source of data collection. And this will be discussed in the study in the lecture after this, next to this lecture. However, to just start with and leave you with a thought to think about is that what is this method and results, and what they have in common is that methods and results in a study have two major things in common. At the level of research, they are the parts devoted to your empirical or original research. This is where you focus on what you do and what you find in your own study. So as you recall from our hourglass diagram, the introduction, that includes literature review and discussion section of a report, are the wider perspective you take on your study, placing it in the context of theories and studies written about elsewhere. Now, at the level of reporting, they have in common the fact that you focus on writing about what you did and what you found. So now we will go on to our discussion deeper in methods and results in our next lecture, inshallah. This was all we had to discuss about research today. And I repeat once again, when we are discussing research, basically we are talking about writing reports, because this is process of research that is a significant part of report writing. This brings us to the end of the talk for today's subject matter, and we need to get into our language expansion and listening exercise. And today you are going to talk about, and listen to rather, how to debrief your project. And what do I mean by debriefing a project that you are going to listen to into our audio clip of the lecture. Okay, so let's start with our today's listening exercise. You can look at the questions that you will be answering after listening to this audio clip. So let's move on to our audio clip.
Hello and welcome back to Business English Pod. My name's Edwin, and I'll be your host for today's lesson on debriefing a project. Every project has its ups and downs, its successes and its problems. But every company hopes it can get better with each new project and avoid the problems of previous undertakings. So how can we do that? How can we improve what we can do at the project level? Well, we talk about it. When a project, an experience, or a venture is complete, we need to discuss what went well and what didn't go so well. And through this discussion, we learn. We find out why we succeeded in some areas and why we failed in others. Sometimes we call this debriefing a project, and the point of this debriefing is to learn how to do a better job the next time around. In this lesson on discussing the outcome of a project, we'll learn lots of useful collocations. Collocations can help you sound more natural in English. But what exactly is a collocation? Well, a collocation is a group of words that English speakers often use in combination. Correct collocations sound natural. For example, we say, make a mistake. But incorrect collocations sound unnatural. For example, people would find it strange if you said, do a mistake, or take a mistake. As you listen to the dialogue, try to pick out some of these expressions, and we'll go through them later in our own debrief. In the dialogue, we're going to hear a conversation between Dean and Michelle. Their company has recently finished a project to expand a production facility, and now they're talking about how the project went. In other words, they're debriefing the project. As you listen, try to answer the following questions. 1. What were the successes of the project? 2. What were two causes of delays on the project? 3. What does Michelle say she'd like to see in their company?
Okay, so how about giving me the major takeaways on this, and then we can hash out some ideas and what we might have done differently later on. Sound good?
Sure. Well, overall, the client feedback was pretty positive for the most part. Of course, they were happy that we managed to stay on budget, no surprises there. And they told me the new workflow in the facility is just what they were looking for.
That's great to hear. I've seen the end result, and I think we did a bang-up job.
Definitely. But you know, we had to overcome some obstacles along the way. Things that we could definitely learn from moving forward.
For sure. I know we experienced some delays in the early stages, right?
Yes, there were some hiccups, to put it mildly. We got a bit bogged down in the original design phase. There was some indecision on the client's part, and they didn't get on board with our ideas right away. So we ended up breaking ground almost 2 months later than anticipated. And then there was that dispute with a couple of the subcontractors.
Right. Yeah. I want to hear more about that later, but let's keep going.
Well, beyond that, the whole issue of temporary shutdowns in the plant was a pretty big sticking point. We should have worked through that better in the beginning, but it turned out okay in the end. And one other thing, this is something I'd like to see, is better communication on our side. I think those are the main things.
Okay, great. Now let's back up a bit. This thing with one of the subcontractors. I was away in Dallas and didn't really catch the whole thing. Can you bring me up to speed on how things played out?
Well, the thing with City Steel caused a lot of delays. They had to replace some of the structural beams after they failed inspection. That problem caused delays for the roofers, who weren't so happy about the surprise factor. And although we tried working through it with them, in the end, they decided to file a claim and backed out.
But we've covered our butts on that, right?
Now, let's go through the dialogue again and look at the collocations Dean and Michelle used in their discussion.
Okay, so how about giving me the major takeaways on this, and then we can hash out some ideas and what we might have done differently later on. Sound good?
Before they hash out or discuss in detail ways to improve performance, Dean wants Michelle to give him the major takeaways on the project. A takeaway is an idea or lesson that should be remembered from a discussion, meeting, or project. So, major takeaways is a common way to talk about the main or important lessons. Let's practice some more ways of using this expression.
I think one of the major takeaways on this is that we have to get the client's approval in writing.
It's really important that we meet at the end of the project to discuss the main takeaways.
Now, let's hear Michelle begin her summary.
Sure. Well, overall, the client feedback was pretty positive for the most part.
Michelle is going to start by discussing what she calls the client feedback, which is what the client has actually reported back concerning the project. Feedback can be good or bad, positive or negative. And according to Michelle, the feedback was positive for the most part. That means it wasn't all positive, but mostly. It's important to consider client feedback when we debrief a project. So let's run through some more examples of this phrase.
We often collect client feedback through a post-project online survey.
After listening to the customer feedback, I think we need to improve our response time.
Next, we'll hear Michelle give some of the specifics of that feedback.
Of course, they were happy that we managed to stay on budget, no surprises there. And they told me the new workflow in the facility is just what they were looking for.
The first bit of feedback is about the budget, and Michelle reports that the client was happy they stayed on budget. So, if staying on budget is a positive thing, it must mean they didn't spend more than they budgeted. Instead of saying stay on budget, We can also say stay within the budget, as you can hear in one of the following examples.
I think we have to reduce our materials cost if we want to stay on budget.
These delays are going to make it really difficult for us to stay within the budget on the project.
All right, so this was all for the listening audio clip that you went through. Now let's discuss our answers. And before I discuss our answers, you definitely would have gone through the collocations activity that we have listened to in the audio clip, and it was about three major words in the talk: takeaways, feedback, and stay on. Now, a word about the answers. The first question was, what were the successes of the projects? Well, it went pretty positive, and they were happy to stay. The clients were happy to stay on the budget, and new workflow is as what they have expected. Well, the second question was, what were two causes of delay on the project? Well, the hiccups involved in decisions of the clients and dispute with a couple of subcontractors. The third question was, what does Michael say she would like to see in their company? Better communication on our side. So this was all about today's listening activity. Well, after the listening activity, that was also language expansion activity, we have come to the end of our talk. Let us quickly review what we covered in today's talk. Well, we talked about report writing and the entire process that is involved in report writing, which brought us to understand what is research and what is the research process. So in today's talk, we discussed the nature of research, the types of research, how to conduct an academic or professional investigation, what is this process, proposal, and report process about. So this was all for today's talk. I will see you in the next talk, inshallah. Till then, Allah Hafiz.